And lecture 8 will concentrate on what we call social languages. And I also would like to make it very clear that the branch of linguistics, which is called social linguistics, is very much important for our term, which is discourse analysis. Why? Because it deals with the relation between languages and societies. A language could not be understood but if we studied it, or we study it in its social context. You couldn't interpret something without understanding the society where that sentence or that text is said. So all of us master means able to use, able to speak. All of us master and control more than one social language. So we switch among them according to the situation we are in. In other words, I am a native Arabic speaker. Yes, I'm talking about one language, which is Arabic language. But when it comes to social languages, indeed, I can use Arabic language in different ways. I can use different codes, different dialects of the same language, different ways of the same language, depending on with whom I am speaking and where I am, let me say, speaking. For example, once I speak to my father and mother, the social language used differs from the language. The social language, I say social because it is taken from society. The society taught me that once you address your father, you have to speak in that way. But once you talk to your friends, yes, you can speak in another way. So, the social language I use, I'm talking about Arabic, I use with my father differs from that I'm going to use when I leave the house and I start to speak with those who are at the same age as mine, who are my friends, who started with me as friends from the very beginning of my life, from my childhood. So here I talk about two social languages. If I'm speaking to my father and mother, I will speak in a way which shows them my respect to them. I will choose a way which helps me show them that I'm educated, I'm nice, I'm good. You are to be proud of me. At the moment I leave them and I meet my friends in the street, I will change. The code, the dialect, the way, the social language I use. I will start speaking with my friends loudly because the motive has changed. I'm not meant to show my friends that I'm clever or educated. I'm meant to show them that I'm tough, I'm strong. So, the social language that I will use with them will change. Because I will take into consideration other factors. So everybody has more than one social language in his life. I'm talking about one language. Within that language, there are social languages. And once I leave my friends, and suppose I go to my university, and I start talking to my professor, I will speak in another way. This is another social languages, or social language. So far I have talked about 3 languages, and I can switch. I control, I master these 3 social languages because I'm professional at Arabic and I'm living in an Arab society. So I know how to address my father and what the society expects from me when I talk to my father, I respect and appearing as nice, as good, and what I'm expected from the society when I talk to my friends, and what I'm expected to be when I talk to my prof. I have to show him respect. He is the one who is responsible for me. He is my professor, my teacher. So, all of us master and control more than one social language. So, we switch among them. Sometimes I use this social language, one. Then I must switch to social language, the second, or the third. According to the situation means with whom I'm talking, where I am. If I'm at home, I will speak in a way. If I am in the office of my prof, I have to change the way. So we switch among them according to the situation we are in. So everybody has more than one social language, and he can switch among them. He can switch among them. This is a very important point. Notice, the word conversation, once I say conversations with a big C, capital C, and I don't write it with the small letter C, because I'm talking about another type of conversation. I'm not meant here with a conversation between two persons, two girls, two boys who are equal. No, I'm not talking about individuals. Big C conversations, conversation among discourses. Notice, here I'm not talking about a discourse, about a conversation between individuals, Ahmed and Ali, Huda and Maryam, for example, my father and my mother, me and my teacher. No, it is a conversation among discourses. Discourses can converse, and what I mean by discourse, as I said last time, I'm talking about ideas in a given society. A discourse between, or conversation among discourses, if I do talk about white Americans and Native Americans, it is something historical. Some of them, or part of them, one of these groups feel that they are the ones who developed America and made it a great country. The other group, the Native Indians, Native Americans, feel that no, they are the real owners of America, and they are the ones who deserve living in America. So this is something started 300, 400 years ago, and the conversation in this way is still the same way. The individuals might change, but the discourses are the same. The concept, the idea between two groups, one who feels that he is the one who developed America, and the one who feels that he lived in America 15,000 years ago, and as a result they are the real owners of America. And this is the concept, the discourses. Something deeper than a conversation between two people, two individuals. Now it is time to become clearer about what we mean by conversation. This is important. The word conversation, as G is using it here. G, the author of the book on which we depend, and I talked about it at the beginning of our lecture. The word conversation, as G is using it here, can be misleading. We tend to think of conversations as just words. Conversation, it is just words. You say something, I say something, through the use of some words. But the source of conversations, he refers to G, the author of the book. But the source of conversation he is talking about involve a lot more than words. They involve the discourses, in fact, conversation. They involve these conversation discourses. It is better perhaps to call them conversations with a big C, to differentiate it from conversation between individuals. Conversations within a big C, since they are better viewed as historic, something historic. The conversation between Native Americans and white Americans is something historic. Something has something to do with the history of of America as a country. Viewed as historic, conversations between and among discourses, not just among individual people. Please keep this in mind. If, as I said before, you are listening to a conversation between a Native American and a white American, indeed, who represents the conversation between two concepts, two ideas, two values, two beliefs, are really individuals, but they are not talking with one another as individuals, Ahmed with Ali, about something personal. No! While talking, one of them feels, the Native Americans, that, okay, I'm the owner of this country. At the same time, the white American, while he is having this conversation, he conveys messages that I'm the one who developed that country. This is something started many years ago. And now it's presented by the talk between two individuals, but indeed we are talking about something bigger than something personal. Conversations with a big C, since they are better viewed as historic conversations, something related to the history. If you understand the history of America, you can understand the conversation between these two people, these two individuals. Are better viewed as historic conversations between and among discourses, not just among individual people. Think, for instance, as we mentioned above, of the long-running, started from many years, this means, of the long-running historic conversation between biology and creationism, or between the Los Angeles Police Department and Latino street gangs. No! Los Angeles Police Department is a department that started hundreds of years ago. Latino street gangs are some gangs that live in Los Angeles hundreds of years ago, tens of years ago. Now, we're talking about a discourse or conversation between discourses, ideas. Being a person who belongs to the Latino street gangs, or a person belonging to Los Angeles Police. So the conversation takes place is not between George, who is one of the Los Angeles Police Department, and, for example, Mario, who is one of the Latino street gangs. Indeed, both of them presents a bigger concept. The bigger concepts in here is Los Angeles Police Department, and the other is Latino street gangs. As if I'm saying the conversation is between Los Angeles Police Department and Latino street gangs, but it is represented through those individuals. So they are talking to one another from this viewpoint. My being Latino street gang, this is my identity, and my being one of the members of Los Angeles Police Department. More than people and more than language are involved in conversations. It is not people only, and it is not language. They involve as well. In conversations of this type, once it is between discourses, it doesn't involve only people. It doesn't only have a language. They involve as well at least the following three non-verbal things. These three non-verbal things are very much important because they are involved in such a conversation. You have to know them. One, controversy. Second, values. And the definitions are there. And the third is the symbolic value. So, controversy is involved in such a conversation, values, and the symbolic value, and the definitions are also there. The symbolic value of objects and institutions that are what we might call non-verbal participants in the conversation. Let me give you an example of what I'm trying to get at here. Of course, I and me refers indeed or refer here to G, the writer of the book. But as I told you, I summarize what is important in his book and I write them as notes, and these notes are very much important for the exam. You have to depend on them and on what I'm saying in the lectures. And by doing so, you will do perfectly in the exam, inshallah. Let me give you an example of what I am trying to get at here. It is fashionable today for businesses to announce in mission statements their core values attempt to create a particular company culture. For instance, they announced core values. They announced core values of Johnson and Johnson, a large pharmaceutical company. Include the company exists to elevate pain and disease and individual opportunity and reward based on merit, as well as several others. In other words, that company has its own culture. It tries to show people these values. This is part of the conversation I'm talking about. That company has a value, has values to appear to the world that it is a company which is care very much for the health of the people, and at the same time it is the company which cares very much on giving people medicine with the least price, for example. So it has values. This is the example I just want to show you about values. Values of Johnson & Johnson, a large, okay, the company exists to elevate pain. One of our values, to kill pains and disease, to stop diseases, to help people, to help their health, and individual opportunity and reward based on merit, as well as several others. I want now to return to how whose means who more than one, and what's are communicated in language, keeping in mind that language alone is rarely enough and is always put together with other stuff to pull off a discourse. In other words, the language used is not enough. In order to understand the language, this is the point, what the point means. In order to understand the language, you have to consider other stuff. Other stuff means other factors. So in order to understand a conversation between two people, you have to know their historical relation. So the language itself is not enough. Knowing the culture, knowing the social habits, knowing or understanding the society historically are other stuffs that are important in addition to the language, in order to understand the discourse, in order to understand the text, in order to understand the conversation. For example, as the example I have just given to you, a conversation between a member who belongs to the Latino gangs or a member of the Los Angeles Police Department. If you do not understand the historical relation that Los Angeles Police Department always look at the Latino gangs in the street as those people who cause problems, for example, crimes, and that those Latino gangs look at the police members in Los Angeles as people who always want to arrest them, to accuse them, to see that they are the ones who cause crimes where they are not. If you do not know this relation between these two groups, you wouldn't understand the conversation takes place between them. It is time then to turn to examples in order to make my points about who's doing what's more concrete. Consider then the warning on my aspirin bottle. G has already given a good example for an aspirin bottle. Now, in the aspirin bottle, the companies who made that aspirin bottle wrote some warnings. If you want to play in the field of, or to work in the field of discourse analysis, that warning is to analyze depending on the words used and why these words are used in that warning. Of course, if you are not a specialist, you will read the warning in the bottom without thinking of the connotations that might be related to these words. Listen now. It is time then to turn to examples in order to make my points clear. Consider then the warning on my aspirin bottle, G's bottle, printed below. Italics and capitals are in the warning. Let's have a look at the warning written in the aspirin bottle and how two discourses are there. Warnings. Children and teenagers. This is what we find in the warning. Children and teenagers should not use this medication for chicken pox or flu symptoms before a doctor is consulted about Rye syndrome, a rare but serious illness reported to be associated with aspirin. Keep this and all drugs out of the reach of children. In case of accidental overdose, if you drink or if you take more than you are asked to, seek professional assistance or contact a poison control center immediately. As with any drug, if you are pregnant or nursing a baby, seek the advice of a health professional before using this product. Now, look, it is written in capital. It is especially important not to use aspirin drug the last 3 months of pregnancy, unless specifically directed to do so by a doctor, because it may cause problems in the unborn child or complications during delivery. Let's now see the interpretation of G to this warning. We are going to read it, but before that I just want to make it easier. G has noticed that in the warning sometimes we are talking about two languages. One of the languages could be seen through the use of specific words. We are talking about specific diseases written by specialist people. But the other language is general information that, for example, leave drugs or medicine far from children. Don't put medicine on tables. These are general rules. But before that, he was talking about something specific. Taking over dose leads you to be sent to the hospital, for example. Something that is said by a special person. Let us read. My interpretation of this text is that there are two who doing what's in this warning, and they are interleaved. The first, now we are talking about the first. The first two who doing what's. The first who means the identity of the person. Doing what is he doing? The activity, in other words. The first is made up of the following sentences. Children, something specific. Teenagers should not use this medication for chickenpox, the name of the disease, or flu symptoms before a doctor is consulted about Reye syndrome, a rare but serious illness reported to be associated with aspirin. It is especially important not to use aspirin during the last 3 months. He determined, specified the period, 3 months of pregnancy, unless specifically directed to do so by a doctor, the word doctor, because it may cause problems in the unborn child. He's talking about an unborn child, not a born one, or complications during delivery. Here, things are referred to quiet specifically. Children, teenagers. He determines the people who is talking about medication, chickenpox. He's talking about this disease, but not another. Flu. Last 3 months. Unborn child. Delivery. Doctors are called doctors, and matters are treated emphatically. You emphasize emphatically. Italics. Sometimes, in order to emphasize something, you write it in italics or in capital to show that it's very much important, or in bold. Should not. Notice. Direct rules. Direct orders. Should not. Rare but serious. Especially important. So we are talking about specifically directed. The second who doing what? Notice the second who doing what is made up of the following sentences placed in the middle of the other two. Keep this and all drugs out. He's talking about all drugs, not specific drug, not specific medicine. In general, out of the reach of children. In case of accidental overdose, seek professional assistance or contact a poison control center immediately. As with any drug, if you are pregnant or nursing a baby, seek the advice of a health professional before using this product. Here things are referred to more generally. Any disease, any drug, but before that we specify the kind of disease we were talking about. Generically, this and all drugs, any drug and this product rather than this medication, and aspirin, children rather than children and teenagers. Pregnant rather than last months of pregnancy. Before he talks about pregnant, any pregnant, but here he determines 3 months pregnancy. Doctors are not mentioned, the word doctor were not mentioned, rather the health profession, anybody who is specialist in health, but it is not necessary to be a doctor, is referred to more generally. Professional assistance, poison control, here more generally, okay. And matters are treated less stridently, with the exception of that immediately. Small print, keep out of reach, keep out of reach. Accidental overdose, seek assistance, seek advice. So the choice of the words are very much important because they have their own motives. Why I chose that word here, but not in the first case, because I have my own motives, I have my own reasons. These two who doing what feel different. They are authorized and issued by different voices. They are authorized and issued by different voices means different people, by different or through different social languages. Different who's. Different voices means different ways, different people, to different purposes and effects. The first speaks with a low voice responding to specific court cases. The second speaks with the official voice of a caring but authoritatively knowledgeable company trying to avoid anyone thinking that aspirin in particular is a potentially harmful drug. Of course, the second who doing what partly contradicts the first. By the way, the second who doing what on the aspirin bottle used to be the only warning in the bottle, with the order of the sentences a bit different. So, as if once we talk about a warning written in aspirin bottle, we're talking about to who. Whether you are a specialist and you have the right then to write something specific, or you just somebody who works in that field but you are not a specialist, and then you even do not have the right to specify the kind of diseases that might result as a result of having or drinking or taking aspirin. So we are talking about two who's. This warning, like all utterances, reflects the company it has kept, or to put the matter another way, it reflects a history that has given rise to it. In this case, presumably the new sterner, more direct who doing what, more direct who doing what was added to the more general and vernacular one, because the company got sued over things like Rhine syndrome. So whatever we analyze, we have to keep in mind who's doing what's, and even in the same warning, which in the past we think that one person wrote it, we have found out that indeed it has two voices, if not more sometimes, because it is written by more than one. Sometimes doctors who are specialists, who specify the kind of diseases that might come as a result of aspirin, and the other who is not a specialist, but he wrote something in general about drugs in general that are to be out of reach of children in general, not children whose age is 3, for example. And this is the end of the lecture. I would like to thank you so much, and I wish you all the best, inshallah. Thank you.